This one decision could have rewritten centuries. In 1421, under the command of Admiral Zheng He, the massive treasure fleet of the Ming Dynasty set sail once more. Not to the Indian Ocean, not to the familiar ports of Calicut or the Swahili coast, but beyond. Driven by court ambition, a desire to tame the world's edges, and backed by a reformist Grand Secretary tired of internal strife, a single edict altered the course of human history. Send them east, the emperor decreed, and so they went. Immense junks, leviathans compared to the wooden fishing vessels of Europe, cut through the Pacific, navigating by star, by current, by daring. The journey took months. Men died, but the fleet found land. Not the lonely islets of Polynesia, not Hawaii, but the emerald spine of the Americas, the coast of modern-day Mexico, then further north. This was no accidental landing. This was the beginning of something far greater, an enduring presence, not just a visit. China had arrived, and the world would never be the same. The Ming called their new land Hua Xin, New Harmony. With them came bureaucrats, scholars, craftsmen, eunuchs, and 1,000 civil servants. They did not conquer outright, they integrated. At first, they found the Mexica, what the West would later call the Aztecs, not primitive savages, but a complex, brutal, hierarchical people. There was respect, curiosity, and inevitably, contempt. Gunpowder did not win wars in Huaxin, it won minds. Demonstrations of controlled fire, celestial predictions from Chinese astronomers, and steel tools far superior to obsidian blades awed the Nahuatl-speaking elite. Tribute was established. Trade was formalized. The emperor, thousands of miles away, received golden discs and jaguar pelts. He smiled. More fleets followed. But it was not harmony for long. The tributary model China had exported to Korea, Vietnam, and Tibet was never going to sit easily with a society that worshipped blood and sun through sacrifice. When a Ming magistrate demanded the cessation of human sacrifice in Tenochtitlan, it led to a silent revolt. The priests whispered of omens. The gods were angry. Within a year, a garrison of 2,000 Chinese soldiers and officials were slaughtered in a single night. The retaliation was apocalyptic. From that moment on, China ceased pretending it was a guest. Huaxin became an imperial colony. Reinforcements arrived by sea, and war broke out across the Yucatan and Highland valleys. Ming generals, used to putting down rebellions in Yunnan, treated the Amerindian cities with the same ruthless tactics: siege, famine, and execution. Entire cities were razed not out of hatred, but procedure. Order was imposed. Chinese-style walls were built around pacified cities. Mandarin became the language of courts. The civil service exams were enforced. Aztec nobles were taken hostage and re-educated in Nanjing. By 1500, the Americas were no longer the New World. They were the Middle World. Europe, still squabbling and bleeding itself in petty wars, had barely taken notice. Columbus's expedition, unfunded by a risk-averse Spain that saw no point in looking west when trade was dominated by the East, never left port. There was no Spanish conquest, no gold rush, no Columbian exchange as we knew it. But something else spread across Huaxin: death. The diseases came both ways. While smallpox and measles wiped out millions of indigenous people, silent, unseen killers that marched faster than any army, the Chinese settlers brought more than just microbes. They brought social viruses too. Surveillance, family registries, and rigid Confucian order clashed violently with the chaos and diversity of indigenous cultures. Rebellions erupted yearly, but so did massacres. Harmony by the blade. Some tribes disappeared entirely, not through violence, but erasure. Those who resisted assimilation were declared untamable, their lands confiscated, their people relocated. The Maya writing system was obliterated by decree and replaced with bureaucratic Chinese characters carved into stone. Local languages, once rich and diverse, were demoted to village tongues. The grand libraries of the Mexica, filled with codices on bark and skin, were translated, rewritten, and sanitized by Chinese censors. And yet, something more insidious grew in Huaxin. Not just colonization, transformation. By the 1600s, Huaxin was the pearl of the Ming world. With agriculture reshaped by terracing, rice paddies spread across the southern Americas. A new syncretic culture emerged, part Nahuatl, part Confucian. Children bore names in both tongues. Schools taught ancient Chinese poetry alongside local mythology. But these schools were monitored, state-run, and ideologically policed. The notion of individual liberty, barely a whisper in Europe, found no oxygen in Huaxin. Instead, the bureaucracy deepened. Every village was catalogued, every person classified. A census was taken every 5 years. Taxes were paid in jade, maize, and labor. The head tax became a noose. Confucian harmony came at the cost of freedom. Europe finally awoke in horror. When the first Portuguese ships reached Brazil in the late 1500s, they found fortified Chinese ports, dragon-embossed ships patrolling the coasts, and an imperial bureaucracy that dwarfed anything in Iberia. Trade was not impossible, but it was controlled. China did not want allies, it wanted tribute. Europe was now the backwater. Spain and England, desperate to catch up, tried to push north into what is now Canada. But even there, Chinese outposts had emerged, lighthouses of empire lighting the cold Atlantic shores. By the 1700s, global power had shifted completely. The Atlantic was a Chinese lake, the Pacific an imperial highway. The Enlightenment, if it came at all, was strangled in its crib. The printing press was banned in Huaxin until it could be properly monitored. Free thought was regulated. Science existed, but only within state-sanctioned academies. Medicine advanced, but only in directions the Ministry of Morality allowed. Political theory stagnated. Democracy never took root. The indigenous traditions of resistance, which might have given rise to a new political order, were systematically broken. But the empire did not last forever. Corruption metastasized. Eunuchs competed with viceroys. Pirate kings, many of mixed Chinese and native descent, set up black markets on the coasts. Whole provinces stopped paying tribute. Native revolts merged with bandit uprisings. In the early 1800s, a young warrior scholar named Tlatoani Zhang led a rebellion in the mountains of modern-day Colombia. His manifesto blended Taoist cosmology with indigenous visions of liberation. He was crushed, but not before his ideas spread like wildfire. By 1850, Huaxin collapsed into civil war, not between nations, but between visions. Some wanted reform, constitutional Confucianism, a dream of moderation. Others wanted a return to native rule, free of Chinese interference. The violence was total. In the ashes, the Western world saw its chance. Britain, now industrialized, formed alliances with coastal rebel leaders. Steamships arrived in what is now Panama. Rifles were traded for loyalty. Railroads followed. A new scramble for the Americas began, one where the Imperial West, decades behind, now came roaring in. But this time, there were no uncontacted peoples. There were only the children of a long occupation, bitter, fractured, traumatized. The 20th century never knew a United States. Instead, it saw a fractured continent, dozens of warlord states struggling to balance identity, memory, and modernity. No Declaration of Independence, no Constitution, no New York, no Hollywood. The world's lingua franca, a stilted trade language mixing Mandarin, Nahuatl, Portuguese, and English, spoken across embattled cities from Tenochtitlan on the sea to New Canton. And what of China? The Mother Empire fell into decline. The effort to maintain Huaxin drained it of life. By 1900, Beijing was ruled by warlords. Russia expanded unchecked. Japan, never threatened by a US Pacific fleet, built its own empire unopposed. World wars came, but they were different. There was no Manhattan Project, no Cold War, no moon landing. Technological progress limped, burdened by centralized control and fragmented states. The internet, if it emerged at all, was a state-monitored system of digital tribute. A single red wax seal in 1421, a fleet launched east, a world reordered. And so we return to the present, not the one we know, but one defined by one decision centuries ago. This wasn't an accident. This was a strategy, a plan to impose harmony. But harmony, when built on domination, rots from within. And in the world that followed, freedom came not from the sea, but from the memory of what was lost. This is not the world you were born into, but it could have been. Hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe. It really helps us. Thank you for watching.